Hey everybody, thanks for watching this second video I'm making about my kind of personal side project, third-person shooter game that I'm calling Kinetic here. You can see it up there in the corner of the map, that's how I know what it's called. Uh, but this is a video kind of following up on the one I produced last week that I wanted to narrate this time so I can explain a little bit more about what's going on and kind of respond to some feedback I got from some friends about bits and pieces that were working and not working so much from what they could tell in the video last time. The biggest bit of feedback I got was that the enemies were just a little too difficult to avoid taking damage from. So I wanted to take this past week to kind of spend some time like tuning the enemies, giving myself some different levers to pull to kind of make them a little bit easier to fight. So I'll just jump right in and kind of show you a little bit of the combat and then tell you a little bit of what I'm debugging and some things I changed from there. So if I walk out here, the first enemy will spawn. If he sees me, you'll see this yellow sphere show up around my character. That's kind of indicating he knows where I'm at, whereas if I go back here around the corner, he'll lose track of me and then kind of try and find me from there. So it's the kind of basic beginning of a stealth system that I'm pretty excited about where I can take that in the future. The other bit is this yellow sphere kind of follows me with a little bit of a delay when he can see me. That's trying to simulate that he's like trying to track me and can't quite keep up, so he'll miss a little bit more of his shots when I'm moving. So whereas if I get like stuck on the edge here, like almost all of his shots will hit me if he's within range. The other thing I've worked on, you'll see from time to time this green sphere show up around him. That means he's got permission to fire at me. He like asked the system, can I shoot at the player? And the system says yes, which will pretty much say yes every time when there's just one enemy in the area. But if I go over here, get a few more enemies to spawn, I think I just triggered the 3 over there. Let me get the next set. If I go up these stairs, the next set will spawn as well. So now you'll see, like, this guy's got a green sphere, then he's got a red one, then somebody else back there will get a green one. I basically limited it so that only one enemy can fire at me at a time, so the system kind of takes turns, like, dishing out tickets, as I'm calling it, to the different enemies. And I'm scoring who's got permission to fire at the player based on their distance from the player and how long it's been since they last shot at me. So this just means that, like in this case, when I'm fighting like 7 enemies at once or so, it's not that if they can see me, then all 7 of them shoot me all at once, and the player basically dies instantly. It gives you a little bit of a chance to like run across the open area without taking damage from them all at once. I do want to tune that a little bit. Like it feels like probably when the player's like out in the open like this, that over time it should build up and offer like more tickets to the enemies to fire at the player, kind of punish you for not being in cover for a little amount of time. Alright, so you can see that also once I have a bunch of enemies shooting me at once, there's a multiple of these yellow spheres out here. It's something I'll probably adjust as well to like make sure that they're not all tracking me separately, but they're kind of like sharing information with each other about where I'm at. So like if I go like up here, you'll see like they slowly start to lose track of me one by one as I like go around a corner or something, which that doesn't really feel necessary for them to all track me independently like that. But I'll probably have like whichever one has seen me last, it'll like notify all the others like where the player's at. That's probably the most interesting stuff to show you kind of live in the demo here. So if I tab out of the live game and show you a little bit of how a few different things work in the editor here, basically I added a bunch of different variables to my enemies. This is my enemy blueprint class here. So these are all about like kind of influencing their difficulty. So like I've got that score of like whether they're allowed to fire at me, but then all these other variables are new since the last week. So it's like how many bullets can they fire at once? Instead of firing their entire clip all at once, they'll fire half of it is the way I have it configured right now. What distance can they fire at me from? This one I actually tuned kind of backwards of what you might have expected. I let the enemies fire at me from a further distance instead of like closing in range and then firing at me, because that actually makes them a little bit less accurate when they fire at me from further away, so you take a little bit less damage. You'd think that they'd be more powerful if they were firing at you from further away, but if I'm limiting the number of them firing at me at once, it ends up not necessarily being the case. Then I've got a minimum time between bursts that they'll fire, so they kind of wait a little bit between times firing at me. When they can see me, they'll wait a little bit before firing their first shot based on this variable, like how much time should they wait, how much time does it take them to recognize me, trying to simulate kind of a reflexes for the enemies there a little bit. And then these next two variables are kind of similar. They're a little bit like a multiplier on the basic ability that weapon should give the enemy. So right now all my weapons have kind of a basic accuracy, a basic muzzle velocity that they include. But then to make the enemies a little bit easier to fight, I want to be able to multiply that accuracy so the enemies can be a little bit less accurate than the player, and their enemy bullets will travel a little bit slower than the player's bullets. And then this last one is what you saw with that yellow sphere kind of lagging behind the player a little bit. So it takes a little bit of any enemies are aiming like a fraction of a second behind where the player last was to kind of simulate them having like to take some time to like kind of track you and give you them a less likelihood that they'll hit you instantly when you're running around. And that's basically what I've done this week. From here, I want to give the player the ability to throw grenades so I could like kill this whole clump of enemies all at once, kind of rebalance things, make the player a little more powerful, and then should give me some freedom to kind of add back some difficulty on the enemies, give them some powerful abilities, and kind of escalate things from there. But look for you in the next video.